Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Aro Ling Cardiff. This evening, we are going to give you a couple of Mahasiddhas stories, and Ngakpa ö-Dzin is going to read us two, I believe.
I am indeed, hopefully, if time permits. First of all, I'd like to introduce, for those of you who don't know the Mahasiddhas tradition, it spanned perhaps 1,000 years in India. And the tradition of the Mahasiddhas was one of finding your practice and finding your enlightened nature within your occupation. And as teachers, the Mahasiddhas helped other people to do that, people who thought that they didn't have time for practice, people who thought they were too unintelligent, too busy, or whatever. The Mahasiddhas would actually indicate what it was about their life and what it was about their particular enthusiasm or occupation that was their practice. The particular set of Mahasiddha stories that we have, the group of Mahasiddhas is often referred to as the 84 Mahasiddhas. There were certainly were 84 Mahasiddhas, but all the lists of the Mahasiddhas aren't identical. So there were many, many more, and probably many who never made it onto any lists at all. This particular set of stories comes from the revealed teachings of Jomo Pema ö-Dzin, who was one of the enlightened women within the lineage of the Aro. And many lineages hold teachings of the 84 Mahasiddhas. These are ours, and they have been written and composed by Ngakchen Rinpoche and Kandra Dechen. And they will be, at the time of recording, I should say, they will be published in 4 volumes over the next few years. But if you're watching this in a few years' time, they were published as a set of 4 volumes, which are now available from Arrow Books Worldwide and Amazon and your local Martian bookshop. So this is, we begin with the story of Minapa, who was the whale siddha. Minapa was a Shudra, born of a Bengali fishing family in the seaport of Samudrabandra on the Coromandel coast. He learned the skills of fisherman's life from an early age, and his father was proud of him for his courage, skill, and intelligence. His mother loved him for his kindness and for the keen duty he showed to his father. He was eager to learn, eager to pull his weight in the family economy, and eager to become a fully functioning adult. When his father was too old to work, Minapa took over completely. He cared for his parents until they died, and then continued completely alone. He realized that he should have sought a wife, but he'd always been too busy with his training, his work, and eventually his responsibility for his parents. By the time he realized that there would be no one to care for him in his old age, it was too late, and he decided to let the future look after itself. He was not saddened by the shape his life had taken, because he loved his work and he loved the sea. Minapa was accustomed to isolation, having spent most of his waking life in his boat on the sea. He was well attuned to the weather, to the moods of the sea, and had an intuitive grasp of the nature of his environment. He was not a man of any intellect and had no education. He was illiterate in terms of his society, but extremely well versed in the skills of sailing and fishing. He was an accomplished navigator, knowing the patterns of the stars, sun and moon, and was possessed of great strength and endurance. The art of fishing had taught him patience and the need to be alert to the dangers of a life at sea, and gave him a mind that was both quiet and vigilant. In order to survive, he needed to know every sign of bad weather and every indication that arose from the movement of waves. Minapa was a man who would be categorized as a natural sage, a person who has developed spiritual qualities simply through living and through past life experience. He was a kind and generous man, but a man with a steady mind, accustomed to silence and lacking the need to be entertained. He loved the changeableness of the sea and asked nothing of it other than being what it was, however it was. He was never bored and had no ambition to be other than he was. Being a fisherman, he had come to terms with the possibility of death, and because of this, he was relatively fearless. He had often helped others in peril on the sea and had taken great chances to rescue others from drowning. As chance would have it, he cast his line one day and hooked what seemed to be an enormous catch. But the catch proved more than he bargained for. It was a whale. He tried to let go of the line, but became ensnared and was dragged down into the ocean. As the whale ingested Minapa's line, it drew him further down, and eventually he was swallowed by the whale. Curiously, this saved him from drowning, but imprisoned him in the whale's belly. Minapa was accustomed to isolation, and so he had no fear of his imprisonment. He had no fear of darkness, as he sometimes fished at night, when the sky was overcast and therefore entirely dark. He had food enough to eat, as the whale constantly swallowed fish, and although they had to be eaten raw, they kept him alive. His main problem was thirst, but fortunately the whale had swallowed some flotsam and jetsam, amongst which were jugs of water and wine. After some days in the belly of the whale, Minapa heard voices. He was aware that they were not human voices, but nonetheless he understood them. The voices were those of two Nagas. Nagas, you may know, are intelligent creatures who are part human, part serpent, and they also have dharma and also have practice. One was the student and the other a teacher. The student asked questions about the nature of reality, and the teacher answered. The student, however, suffered a wandering attention and would occasionally lose the thread while the teacher was answering. After giving one answer, the teacher asked, "Have you understood what I've told you, or has your mind drifted?" Minapa had heard the discourse of the Naga, and even though he had never received Dharma teaching, he understood perfectly and replied, "Yes, I understand your teaching, and I'm grateful for hearing it." The Naga was surprised on hearing these words from a human and replied, "These were not words for a human being to hear. Having heard what you've heard, you cannot now return to the human realm." "But how will I live in the belly of this whale?" asked Minapa. "That is not necessarily my concern, as I did not place you inside this whale. Yes, I do not hold you or anyone else responsible." "Those are words of strength and wisdom," replied the Naga. "Is there more you would say before I take my leave?" "Only that I shall die here." "That is true," replied the Naga. "You cannot breathe in the realm of the Nagas, even if I were to release you from the whale." Then there is no more to be said, replied Minapa matter-of-factly. You are brave, the Naga mused, considering the problem. And you are undaunted by death. How did you come to be within this whale? I was out on my boat, and the whale took my fishing line. Then I was swallowed when the line was caught round my arm, and I could not release myself from it. Ah, a killer of fish, the Naga replied with disapproval. This does not endear me to you. I am not inclined to be merciful to one who shows no mercy. Yes, you are right, replied Minapa, as you see the world. I have killed your kindred. And as you see the world? Ah, as I see the world, well, I see it as human beings see it, and as I was taught to see it by my father. We see fish as food. We are poor and we live by the sea. So we see the sea as our source of nourishment. I do not say this is right. I only say that this is all I know. That is reasonable, replied the Naga. It is true that the karmic perception of all beings is what it is, and you do not seem evil by predisposition. It could be that I can overlook this fault, grievous though it is in my eyes. Now tell me further, did you deliberately choose to overhear my teaching? No, it was entirely accidental. I only realized I was overhearing something when it was too late to decide whether to listen or not. And by then I found it too interesting not to listen. That is why I answered when you asked the question as to whether your student's attention had wandered. Well, I would know if you were lying, and I perceive that you do not lie, the Naga replied, and proceeded to think deeply about the problem. After some hours, he decided that Minapa was a worthy vessel for the teaching he had overheard. Ordinarily, I could not let you return to the human realm, but I see your mind, and I believe you will benefit beings with the knowledge that you have gained. I shall cause this whale to cough you onto the shore, and there you may begin your life as a yogi. The only condition I make is this: you may no longer be a fisherman. The lives of fish are sacred to us, so instead of fishing, you must become a fish who lives above the sea. How is this possible? Asked Minapa. You must follow the teaching you have overheard, and you must develop the qualities of a fish. You must develop these qualities for a month before you are coughed up onto the beach, and the whale's belly shall be your retreat cave. What are the qualities of the fish that I must develop? Inquired Minapa. These are the qualities of a perfect tantrika. The fish, like the perfect tantrika, swims effortlessly in the stream of whatever arises. The fish dwells in the pervasive ocean, just as tantrikas dwell in the experience of the pervasive tsalung. Fish live in water, but are never wetted by it, just as tantrikas dwell in the appearance of duality without being distorted by it. They dwell within samsara, but they are not of samsara. The fish never sleeps, just as the tantrika never loses his awareness in the waking state or the sleeping state. The fish has large unblinking eyes, just as the tantrika has large unblinking eyes that see everything without involvement in convoluted discourse. Integrate with the essence of this teaching and you will become Minapa, the fish siddha, the fish for whom you have always sought. Minapa then practiced as he had been instructed, and in a month he had attained the non-dual state. At that moment, the Naga became aware of Minapa's realization and, as he promised, came to speak with him. You have fulfilled your promise, practiced with diligence, and now I perceive you have achieved the result. The whale shall now take you to the shore, where you will be delivered onto dry land. We shall never meet again in this life, but I believe you will remain true to your word and never return to the life of a fisherman. The whale swam to the nearest coast, where the Naga caused the whale to cough up Minapa onto a beach. Once standing on the sand, Minapa saw a large congregation of people. They'd never seen a whale come so close to the shore before, and they were curious to see what it would do. Suddenly, the whale opened its mouth and let out a rushing of air and water, and there stood Minapa before them. They asked him, after they recovered from the shock, how he had come to emerge from the mouth of a whale. Minapa recounted his experience. He kept the Naga's teaching secret, but sang a song of realization for the people. The fish yogi swims effortlessly in the stream of whatever arises. The fish yogi dwells in the pervasive ocean of the experience of the pervasive Sa-lung. The fish yogi lives in the water of dualism, but is never wetted by it. The fish yogi dwells within samsara, but I am not of samsara. Never sleeping the sleep of delusion, the fish yogi never loses awareness in the waking state or the sleeping state. The fish yogi's unblinking eyes see everything without involvement in convoluted discourse. If you integrate with the essence of this teaching, you will attain the non-dual state. The Raja of the land soon came to hear of Minapa and presented him with gifts in order that he should remain for some time and be of benefit to his people. Minapa did as he was asked, but eventually he was moved to travel and offer teachings in many other places. A fish must swim, he told the Raja. A fish never remains in one place, but must move with the flow of the ocean. Likewise, I must move with the flow of circumstances and find myself where I am needed. Minapa took his leave the next day and returned to his home. There he found his fishing nets and line, which he took down to the shore and burnt, calling out, I shall never fish again, but shall walk towards the mountains and serve people wherever I may. Those who had known him asked him, why are you behaving like a madman, burning the tools of your livelihood? Is it madness to keep one's word? Minapa replied. No, the fisherman responded, but it is madness to destroy good nets. At this, Minapa sang them a song of realization. I am the madman who no longer draws beings to their deaths, and who has thus abandoned his boat in token of promises made. I am the madman who meditated beneath the sea, but breathed no water. I am the madman who dwelt in the belly of a whale, but was not eaten. I am the madman delivered safely to the shore by the whale that had dined upon him. I am the madman who cut the lines of duality, which hook the senses. I am the madman who revealed the links of interdependent origination as both form and emptiness. I am the madman who liberates the net of Indra into non-dual space. On hearing this, some of the fishermen sneered. Others were inspired, even though their understanding of his words were lacking, and were able to perceive him as a Mahasiddha. These fishermen left with Minapa and became his disciples, and each of them realized the non-dual state after some years of practice. Those who sneered eventually came to hear of Mahasiddha Minapa's miraculous appearance from the mouth of a whale, and heard it confirmed by many who had gone to the beach to see the whale. The sneering fishermen were ashamed of their reactions to Minapa and went in search of him, but never found him. Mahasiddha Minapa lived to a great age and wandered continually, giving teachings all over India and Nepal. And now we have the story of Goraksha, the non-dual cowboy. Goraksha was born in Dimapur on the banks of the Dongsari River in the east of India during the reign of Raja Devapala. His family were the Vaishyavana, incense merchants, who, having fallen on hard times, had to take drastic measures to survive. When financial crisis overwhelmed the family, Goraksha's father had to hire him to a local cattle baron in order to supplement their income. Goraksha was not averse to this work, as it took him out into the countryside, a place he loved, and it enabled him to gain a broader sense of fragrance than that provided by incense. Goraksha had been trained in the art of making incense, and was thus possessed of an acute sense of smell. Goraksha loved the fragrance of wild herbs and flowers, and soon came to detect the presence of leopards or tigers simply by smelling them on the breeze. Tigers were a great danger, but they did not appear very often. Leopards, on the other hand, were numerous, and Goraksha armed himself with a long, heavy staff in order to keep them away from the calves. They would not attack full-grown cattle, but the young were always in grave danger of being taken. The other cowboys would not risk their lives to protect the calves from leopards, but Goraksha was always alert to their presence and would always go to defend the calves. The other cowboys were incredulous as to why Goraksha would risk his life in such a way. Are we paid to risk our lives? No. Why should we risk being mauled by leopards just so that our employers can make a better profit? Goraksha was equally incredulous. Isn't it supposed to be our duty as cowboys? It's not our duty to die, they replied, or be brutally injured. Well, Goraksha mused, why would you not wish to help these poor calves? Do you not feel sorry for their plight? Yes, we do feel sorry for the poor creatures, but not sorry enough to take the kind of risks that you take. In spite of being the lone protector of calves, Goraksha was a kindly, generous lad who bore his comrades no ill will for their cowardice and lack of responsibility. The only aspects of his life about which Goraksha was dissatisfied was the curtailment of his education, for he knew that without education he would be unable to study Dharma. To be an incense manufacturer had naturally led him to think about the purpose of the incense, and from that standpoint, a growing fascination with Dharma had evolved. There was no time in the life of a Bengali cowboy to devote to education or gain access to Dharma, and therefore he had no knowledge of how to practice. All he knew concerning Dharma was that it required sitting motionless. And so he spent evenings late into the night simply sitting still. He had no preoccupation to disturb him unless he caught the scent of a leopard on the wind. And so his silent sitting naturally began to bear fruit without instruction and without his being cognizant of any change that was occurring through his informal engagement with meditation. One evening, several leopards appeared and badly mauled a calf before Goraksha could fend them off. No one came to his aid, and he was mauled himself in his effort to protect the calf. Finally, the leopards left, unable to take the calf. Goraksha was left wounded, yet tending the wounds of the calf. In this sad condition, he was found by the Mahasiddhas Minapa. I saw the vultures circling. I saw them too, answered Goraksha. What did you think when you saw them? Asked Minapa. I thought, mused Goraksha, they're probably waiting for a calf to die, or for me to die. Yes, you're right, young cowboy. That is usually why vultures circle, and that is why, when I saw them, I came here, thinking that some poor creature might be dying. I came to see if I could give some assistance. Goraksha was surprised to see a rather strange man whose skin appeared to be tinged with green speaking to him. Thank you, kind sir, replied Goraksha. I would be grateful if you would help me bind my wounds. I have tended to this poor calf, but cannot bind my own wounds well enough on my own. How did you come to receive these wounds? from the 3 leopards who were trying to take this calf. Were there no other cowboys to help you? No, good sir, or rather yes, but they are afraid of leopards, and I do not blame them for not coming. I did not call out to them for help, and so they had no knowledge of my situation. Minapa considered the young lad carefully as he tended his wounds and said, "You will not know this, but before I became a yogi, I was a fisherman. And that job is a similar job to yours. Both livelihoods contain an element of risk. They also offer the chance of death. These are excellent qualifications for the life of a yogi. Have you ever considered that you might practice Dharma?" "I have considered it, good sir," sighed Goraksha. "But since the difficulties of my family, I've not been able to pursue my education. To study Dharma, one must be educated, and there is no possibility of that now. But I do try to meditate, even though I have no instruction other than remaining motionless." "Where did you learn about remaining motionless?" Minapa asked as he tended to Goraksha's wounds. "I have observed the monks, and this is what they do when they're not studying. So, from that, I understood that being motionless and studying must be the 2 most important things for a monk. This is sad for me, because although I can sit motionless, I cannot study, and therefore the gate of religion is closed to me." "Ah," laughed Minapa, "I see you've learned society's conditioned ideas of what is real in terms of religion. Study has its value, but is not absolutely necessary. To remain motionless is a great skill, and this is absolutely necessary. This skill will serve you well in terms of practicing Dharma." "This is the most marvelous news. Are you a holy man to speak as you do?" "I'm not sure if I'm a holy man or not, but as I said, I'm a Buddhist yogi, and therefore I can tell you what a Buddhist yogi would tell you." "So you think there's some possibility for me to practice religion?" "Certainly. Besides being able to sit motionlessly, you have other advantages that may even be lacking in most monks." "You astonish me, Reverend Sir. What possible advantage could a cowboy have?" "Showing such kindness to the calves in your charge. Kindness is a rare and indispensable necessity of Dharma." "Is kindness so uncommon?" "Yes. Most people, like your cowboy colleagues, are kind only when it's of no great inconvenience to themselves." "That is a sad way to live," commented Goraksha. "Yes, and is also cowardly, which leads me to another great quality that you possess, bravery. Bravery is rare and indispensable necessity of Dharma. No one can practice Dharma if they're cowardly, or if they live in the avoidance of risk. All you need, young lad, is transmission and essential teaching on the nature of mind." "Where can I find such transmission and teaching, Reverend Sir?" asked Goraksha. "And even if I found it, how would I be able to make an offering to receive it?" "You have not only found this transmission and teaching," laughed Minapa, "but you've also paid handsomely for it." "How is this possible?" Goraksha gasped. "You've made the offering I require. The offering you have made has been your kindness to the calves in your charge and your courage in the face of grave danger." Goraksha thanked Minapa effusively for his offer of teaching and transmission. "But how will I be able to practice living the life of a cowboy?" "That is simple," replied Minapa. "There are many who imagine that the practice of Dharma requires time that is free of other activities. But living the life of a monk in itself is no guarantee of accomplishment. Some monasteries are merely sanctuaries for the idle and self-obsessed. Chanting all day long is no guarantee of gaining wisdom. Reciting mantra with a congested mind will avail nothing but more congestion. Silent sitting may well occur in these places, but sitting and doing nothing is no guarantee of realizing emptiness. Everything I shall teach you can be incorporated into exactly the life you have, and through being a cowboy yogi, you will show others that they can do the same. You will therefore be of great benefit to others." "But what of the need for study? How will that be possible living the life of a cowboy?" "That is simple. replied Minapa. There are many who imagine that the practice of Dharma requires great intellectual knowledge. That, however, is only required of intellectuals, and even then, there is no guarantee that they will achieve liberation through that means. I gained all I needed in the belly of a whale, so you may gain all you need in the compassionate solitude of your profession. All you need is to live exactly as you've always lived, but having received transmission and having gained precise knowledge of how to practice in your situation. Goraksha felt inspired by a deep and abiding devotion for his Vajramaster, the Mahasiddhas Minapa, and absorbed everything he imparted concerning view, meditation, and action. The qualities of the perfect cowboy are those of the perfect tantrika. Cowboys live naturally in the unfabricated world where they devote themselves to the protection of others. Cowboys dwell in the sense of pervasive responsibility which connects them with all beings. Cowboys must transcend hope and fear in order to live ascetically as they do, and therefore dwell in the appearance of duality without being distorted by it. They dwell within samsara, but they are not of samsara. Cowboys are always alert, whether awake or asleep, to the danger that exists for others, just as tantrikas never lose awareness in the waking state or the sleeping state. Cowboys have ears that hear what is carried by the wind, and noses to sense what is carried by the wind, just as the tantrika has senses which are open to the entire phenomenal world. Cowboys see, hear, taste, and smell everything without involvement in convoluted discourse. Integrate with the essence of this teaching, and you will become Goraksha, protector of herd-like humanity, and attain liberation. Goraksha practiced as he had been instructed, and after 3 years he attained the mundane siddhis. Having realized the fruit of practice this far, he had little work to do. The leopards became tame amongst the herd he tended and visited him from simple affection. When leopards were nearing death, they came to lie at Goraksha's feet with the intention that he should take their pelts once they were dead. And in this way, Goraksha eventually came to wear leopard skins as clothes. The cattle baron came to hear of this remarkable cowboy and re-established Goraksha's father in his incense business. He told Goraksha that if he could teach the other cowboys something of this art, he would be free to come and go as he pleased, and he would always support his father's business in times of hardship. Goraksha's peers, on observing the tame leopards, naturally asked Goraksha for his secret. He gave it to them freely, as he had been given it, and they all became accomplished yogis. Goraksha, however, was not satisfied with the mundane cities. He knew this was not the end of accomplishment and set out to find Minapa. When he found Minapa, his Vajramaster said, "I've awaited your arrival and can only tell you this. Now that you've protected your charge and passed your knowledge to those who have taken your place, you must now devote yourself to imparting this knowledge as widely as you can. There is no need for you to seek the ultimate siddhi, as the ultimate siddhi will now seek you. Simply live in the service of others, and the ultimate siddhi will be born naturally in the stream of your awareness." Goraksha followed this instruction and attained non-dual realization after 12 years had elapsed.
I like the way these two stories work so well together. The similarity between the cowboy and the fisherman.
Yes.
Yeah. I've often wondered whether the story of Minapa is the same story as Noah.
And Jonah?
Not Jonah.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, you never know
Just
where
from
these
a
things
different
come
tradition.
from. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're quite inspiring to everyone, and especially everyone who has to go out to work. That you find your work in your practice, or your practice in your work, and these stories, I think, are very useful reminder for finding your practice there.
Mm. I really like the songs of realization.
Yes.
Very much pointing out instructions.
Yeah, indeed.
Thank you very much.